Where I lived was called a little community called White Oak Flat, Tennessee, and it was outside of Charlotte. And it was I spent a lot of time at my great-grandparents' home, and it was in the country on a dirt road, and a lot of things happened when I had gone up and spent time with them. I lived nearby where I could walk up to their house. And at night, we didn't have electricity. So at night time, we would sit out on their porch. And it had a driveway, like we called it the lane, that went around the house and connected with another little dirt road. And so one night, they told, we were all sitting out there, and I was too young to remember it, but they told that it happened. And it was quiet in the country, no street lights, nothing, and no houses nearby. And all of a sudden, a sound came up there, what was the driveway, that sounded like a big team of horses or mules coming through, dragging something. They could hear chains rattling, and they all jumped up off of the front porch and went inside. And the next morning, they went throughout the neighborhood asking people if they had any of their livestock that got loose during the night. And everybody said no, said they nothing like that. They didn't have anything that got loose. And so anyway, there was no explanation for that. And then another night, they told, see, we had no air conditioning or electricity, so at night we would sit out on the porch and it was just pitch dark. And there was a cemetery over the hill, over a line of trees, way over the fields. And so that night that they were sitting down there, they had dug a grave. Somebody had that day for a funeral the next morning. And so, in the old cemetery, and so they were sitting there talking like the farm people did, and all of a sudden they looked over that hill across the cedar trees there, and there was a big round ball of like fire or light that came down and settled over where that grave had been dug. And nobody could explain that. It kind of lit up the sky back that way. And so, but one of the most scariest things was they had this room off of the front porch, the little country porch, that was called the front room, and it had a bed, and it was used for a spare bedroom in case somebody wanted to spend the night, but there was only one way into it, and that was off the front porch, and it wasn't connected to the other part of the house at all. And Mammy and Pappy had an old organ in there. And it was the kind that you had to pedal as long and pull the different notes and play all at the same time. Well, they told about how many nights in the middle of the night they would hear that old organ in there playing. And so I've had my first cousin, Junior, that's told me about it too, that he's heard it. And I've heard them tell that so many times. And then he told me recently that Mammy and him went in there, and she was going to read him a story out of his little book. And she had him in there in a chair, and she was reading to him. And all of a sudden, the sheets on the bed there started kind of moving about and crinkling up. and drawing, and she grabbed him and she said, "Come on, child," said, let's get out of here. And so they always thought that that front room was haunted or something. And that was really something. My mother, though, told me about this. They lived in the little community when she was a child of Southside, Tennessee. And so it was her job to go to the mailbox every day. But the only problem was they lived way back off of the road. And the mailbox, you had to walk quite a long distance to down their driveway or lane or whatever they called it on gravel to get the mail. And so she had this trunk, an old trunk in her room that people used to put quilts in. And somehow or another, she got used to talking to this old trunk. And she'd say, now, she called this the rapping spirit. She'd say, now, if we have any mail today, rap 3 times. And she said that she would hear a rapping, a knocking in that old trunk. And she knew then she had to go to the mailbox, so she'd make the long walk to the mailbox, and sure enough, she said that it would have mail. And so she told that that's the way that she knew whether she had to go to the mailbox or not. When I was going to have my surgery some years ago, I had to go into the hospital in the month of July to have some surgery, and it wasn't anything too serious. And so my mother and I were on our way to church. It was a Wednesday evening, and we were going up 46th Avenue on our way to Park Avenue Baptist Church, and it was hot. And so as we was driving along, I looked over there to the right at this house, little house, and sitting out on the porch of that house in a rocking chair was a woman dressed in solid black from neck all the way down to the floor. And I said to my mother, I said, "Mama, look at that woman sitting over there." And it looked like a witch dressed for Halloween, and this was July. I said, "Look at that woman dressed like that sitting over there." Well, I think Mama looked and said, "Well, yeah, isn't that strange?" And so we went on to church, and that night, though, the preacher, Brother Mowry, called me down to have special prayer because I was going into the hospital the next day for surgery. And it's a good thing that he did, because I want you to know that when I had that surgery, I never did. I wouldn't wake up, and they put cold water in my face, and they did everything to wake me up. And I couldn't wake up from the anesthesia, and they did a brain scan and found that I had a large tumor, brain tumor, as big as a tangerine in the front of my head. And they had to do emergency surgery and it took 6 hours to get that out. And it's only because, though, that everybody prayed for me that I made it through. But I'll never forget seeing that picture. And I don't like to see people even now out dressed in all black.